Richard Widmark was one of Hollywood's toughest actors. He was really good at playing bad guys and serious heroes in movies like Kiss of Death and No Way Out. Everyone thought he was calm and cool on the outside, but inside he was angry at a lot of people. He kept a secret list of 8 actors he really didn't like. These weren't just random people. They were super famous stars that everyone loved. When people found out about this list, they were shocked. This isn't just made-up gossip. This is the real story about fights, jealousy, and anger that lasted forever. Number 1. Frank Sinatra. The famous singer Widmark couldn't stand. Let's talk about the biggest name on Richard Widmark's hate list, Frank Sinatra. Yes, that Frank. Sinatra, the amazing singer. The cool guy who could walk into any room and make everyone smile and feel happy. But Widmark didn't feel that way at all. To him, Sinatra was fake. He looked charming and nice on the outside, but Widmark thought he was lazy and didn't work hard. Their story is one of those Hollywood fights that people talked about in whispers for many years. It all started in 1968 when they were making a movie called The Detective. Sinatra was the main star, and Widmark was brought in because he was tough and serious, the kind of actor who worked really hard and took his job seriously. Right from the first day, things went wrong. Sinatra would show up to work many hours late. He still smelled like he'd been at a party the night before, and he expected everyone else to just wait for him and be okay with it. Widmark was so annoyed. He told a friend later, "He acts like just showing up is enough, but it's not enough at all." One time, Sinatra made a joke. He said, "Let's run through this scene really fast so I can go to the bar and get a drink." Widmark didn't think it was funny. He didn't laugh at all. He just stared at Sinatra with a serious, angry face and said very quietly, "Some of us actually came here to work and do our jobs." After that day, they never talked to each other again unless they absolutely had to for the camera during filming. When the movie was finally finished, Widmark promised himself he would never, ever act in another movie with Sinatra again. And he kept that promise. He never did. Later on, he told a reporter, "Charisma and charm can fill up a room and make people like you, but it can't save a bad movie or make up for not working hard." And that was the end of their friendship, or whatever you'd call it. Number 2. Robert Mitchum, the actor who made Widmark. Really mad if you ask anyone who worked on the movie The Way West in 1967. They'll tell you something interesting. The real drama and trouble wasn't in the story they were filming. It was the fight between Robert Mitchum and Richard Widmark. Their personalities were completely opposite, and they clashed the second the cameras started rolling and filming began. Widmark treated the movie set like it was a sacred, holy place, somewhere you had to respect and work hard. But Mitchum acted like he was just walking through it on vacation, not caring much about anything. Every single scene they filmed became a battle. It was like a fight between patience and pride, and nobody was winning. During one really hard, tiring day of shooting out in the Oregon wilderness, that's a wild, natural area with lots of trees and mountains, Mitchum kept messing up his cues. That means he kept missing the moments when he was supposed to say his lines or do his actions. And every time he made a mistake, he just shrugged it off with a big grin on his face, like it was no big deal. When the director asked him to do the scene again, Mitchum laughed and said, "Why should we bother doing it again? They'll just fix it later when they edit the movie." That comment was the spark that set everything off. Widmark became absolutely furious. He was so angry that he turned around and threw his hat down hard on the ground. Then he shouted, "You think acting is just a big joke? Some of us still actually care about doing good work. Then he stormed off, walking fast and angry toward his trailer. The whole crew went completely silent. Nobody dared to move or say anything. And Mitchum? He didn't chase after Widmark or try to apologize. That night, while drinking whiskey, Mitchum reportedly told one of the sound technicians, "That's a person who works with the movie's sound. That man has a stick so far up his back that it's the only thing holding him upright and keeping him standing." When Widmark heard about that comment the next day, he was even more upset. He refused to eat lunch or take breaks with Mitchum for the entire rest of the time they were shooting the movie. When The Way West finally came out in movie theaters, their real tension and anger was impossible to miss. When you watched their scenes together, you could feel the real contempt and dislike crackling between them like electricity. Years later, Widmark said, "Mitchum didn't really act. He just wandered around." When someone asked Mitchum about Widmark, he just chuckled and said, "He worked way too hard." After the movie wrapped up and finished filming, they never spoke to each other ever again. Number 3. Kirk Douglas. When two storms crashed into each other. Kirk Douglas didn't even need to say a single word to irritate and annoy Richard Widmark. The tension and bad feelings between them could fill up an entire room before either man even opened his mouth to speak. They were too much alike in some ways. Both were proud, both were intense, and both were natural-born fighters on screen and off-screen in real life. When they worked together on The Way West in 1967, that similarity turned into an open war. Douglas wanted to be in control of everything. Widmark demanded respect from everyone. Every single day felt like a duel or a fight, and neither man would ever back down or give up. The first big explosion and fight came during a scene they were filming around a campfire. Douglas kept improvising, which means he kept making up new lines and changing the script so he could dominate the shot and be the center of attention. Widmark's patience finally broke like a snapped stick. He slammed his cup down hard on the table and growled in an angry voice, "You've already got the whole frame and the whole camera on you, Kirk. How much more attention do you want?" Douglas just stared back at him, then smirked, that's a mean kind of smile, and said, "Enough to make it good and actually interesting." The entire crew froze like statues as the director, Andrew McLaglen, yelled out, "Cut!" before things got even uglier and more violent. Behind the scenes, when the cameras weren't rolling, things didn't cool down or get better at all. Douglas's big, booming voice carried all across the set. He was always ordering costume changes and lecturing the extras. Those are the background actors. Widmark saw all of this as someone's ego, their pride and sense of importance, gone completely wild and out of control. He told a friend later, "Kirk doesn't really act. He just performs at people and tries to show off. It wasn't that I was jealous or envious. I was just exhausted and tired of it all." After the movie was done, Widmark turned down another offer to work with Douglas in a different film. He said, "There's only room for one storm in a scene, and Kirk brings the whole hurricane with him." When Douglas heard about that comment, he just laughed and told Variety magazine, "Dick never understood what fun was or how to have a good time." From that day forward, their respect for each other vanished and disappeared completely for good. Number 4. Tony Curtis. The pretty face that pushed Widmark way too far the day Tony Curtis showed up on the set of the movie The Long Ships in 1964, Richard Widmark knew right away that it was going to be a war. The difference and contrast between the two of them couldn't have been any sharper or more obvious. Widmark moved through the set very quietly, totally focused on his work, and he only spoke when he really needed to. Curtis swept in like a king, surrounded by personal assistants, mirrors so he could check how he looked, and wearing expensive cologne that you could smell from far away. The crew had barely even started rehearsing the scenes before they realized this wasn't going to be an easy or smooth shoot at all. During the costume fittings, that's when actors try on the clothes they'll wear in the movie, Curtis reportedly started complaining. He said the fabric was making him look bulky and not good. Widmark overheard this complaint and said very flatly, in a bored, annoyed voice, "It's armor, not a fancy tuxedo you wear to a party." From that exact moment on, they couldn't stand each other at all. One of them worked for realism and making things look real. The other one lived for glamour and looking pretty and perfect. Their biggest blow-up and fight happened during a scene they were filming on a ship deck. Real rain was pouring down from above, wind was howling and making loud noises, and Curtis suddenly stopped right in the middle of the shot. He started shouting about how the storm was messing up his hair and making it look bad. That's when Widmark snapped and lost his temper. He turned around and yelled really loud, "That's exactly what makes it feel real, Tony. That's the whole point." The entire crew stood there in complete silence while Curtis stormed off the set, muttering and complaining under his breath about prima donna actors who think they're like generals in the army. When the film finally wrapped and finished shooting, they didn't shake hands or say goodbye nicely. Curtis called Widmark the most humorless man alive, meaning he thought Widmark never laughed or had fun. Widmark shot back privately to his friends. Some people mistake the spotlight and fame for having a real purpose in life. Their hatred and dislike for each other never cooled down or went away. Number 5. Marlon Brando, the genius. Who drove Widmark? Absolutely crazy everyone. In Hollywood talked about how brilliant and talented Marlon Brando was. But Richard Widmark only saw one thing: trouble. He couldn't stand Brando's arrogance. That means thinking you're better than everyone else, his constant lateness to the set, and his endless method-acting experiments that turned movie sets into complete chaos and confusion. Whenever someone mentioned Brando's name at a party or gathering, Widmark would roll his eyes in annoyance and say, "Talent is completely wasted when you don't show it. Respect or take it seriously." That wasn't admiration. That was pure disgust. Their cold rivalry and competition began way back in the early 1950s. That's when movie critics kept comparing the two actors to each other. Brando's raw, powerful performance in the famous movie A Streetcar Named Desire made him the face of a brand-new Hollywood style. Meanwhile, Widmark's precise, razor-sharp, perfectly controlled performances came from the old-school way of acting, all about craft, discipline, and hard work. The press and newspapers loved to frame them as total opposites. Brando was the rebel who broke all the rules. Widmark was the professional who followed them. Widmark absolutely hated every single headline written about this comparison. He saw Brando's sloppy improvisations, making things up as he went, and his endless delays on set as total disrespect to everyone else working. Some people confuse chaos and messiness with genius and brilliance, he snapped once during an interview, leaving absolutely no doubt about who exactly he was talking about. Things reached a breaking point when a movie producer suggested putting them both together in a Korean War film around 1958. Before the meeting even ended, Widmark closed his script, stood up from his chair, and said very flatly and coldly, "Get me an actor who actually knows his lines and comes prepared." Then he walked out of the room without shaking anyone's hand or saying goodbye. Later on, he often complained to people that Brando's influence and way of acting had spoiled and ruined an entire generation of young actors. Those were cold, harsh words, but they were perfectly him, and exactly what he believed. Number 6. William Holden, the rival Widmark. Never, ever forgave the moment William Holden's name started winning big awards in the 1950s. Something inside Richard Widmark changed and shifted. They were both leading men, main actors, during the same time period and era. But Hollywood seemed to worship and love Holden's easy charm and smooth personality, while they overlooked and ignored Widmark's intensity and serious nature. Widmark once told a friend while having drinks together, "They want actors who smile all the time, not actors who sweat and work hard." That bitter, angry feeling never left him for the rest of his life. Their real tension and rivalry began when a studio executive offered William Holden a war film that had originally been promised to Widmark. Do you know what that role was? It was supposed to be a stoic officer, a serious, unemotional military leader, fighting against moral decay and corruption. It was perfect for Widmark's style. But instead, the studio handed it over to Holden right after his movie Stalag 17 became a huge hit. Widmark was absolutely furious and enraged. "They gave it to the Golden Boy," he said later with anger in his voice, "because he photographs prettier and looks better on camera when he's bored and not even trying." From that moment forward, every single time they met at a party or a movie premiere, the air between them would freeze cold like ice. In 1954, both actors were briefly attached to the famous movie The Bridge on the River Kwai. Guess who got the part? Holden did. Widmark never spoke publicly about it to reporters, but his wife June told their close friends that he refused to even watch the film in theaters. He saw it as absolute proof that Hollywood rewarded charm and good looks over discipline and real hard work. Meanwhile, Holden barely even noticed the feud or fight was happening. When someone told him about Widmark's angry comments, he just laughed it off and said, "If he hates me that much, then I must have done something right in my career." That one line spread fast through Hollywood, and it really stung and hurt Widmark when he heard it. Number 7. Spencer Tracy. The legend Widmark refused to worship like everyone else have. You ever wondered how someone as respected and admired as Spencer Tracy could possibly end up on Richard Widmark's bad side and hate list? Well, it happened quietly over time. But when it did, it cut very deep. Widmark had admired Tracy's early work and movies when he was younger. But over the years, he grew more and more frustrated watching Hollywood treat Tracy like royalty, like a king, while younger actors like himself carried all the hard labor and did all the difficult work. He just walks in, sits down in his chair, mumbles a few lines in a quiet voice, and they call it genius and brilliance. Widmark once grumbled and complained after watching the movie Judgment at Nuremberg in 1961. That was a film where they both starred together and acted in the same movie. On that movie set, the tension in the air was thick and uncomfortable. Tracy, who was already in fragile health and not feeling well, often arrived late to work and left early before everyone else. The directors would tiptoe around him very carefully, completely afraid to upset the industry's favorite elder statesman and beloved older actor. Widmark couldn't stomach it. He couldn't stand watching it happen. During one rehearsal, when Tracy refused to repeat a scene one more time because he said he was too exhausted and tired, Widmark snapped and lost his patience. "We're all tired and exhausted, Spence. Some of us still manage to finish the job and do our work," he said sharply. The entire crew froze like ice. Tracy simply stared back at him with that famous quiet smirk. That little smile on his face, that silence and that calm reaction drove Widmark absolutely crazy with frustration. He hated arrogance disguised as calmness. He hated when someone acted superior but pretended to be humble and quiet. In interviews many years later, Widmark never mentioned Tracy by name directly, but he would often warn people about actors who stopped chasing truth and authenticity in their work, because their fame lets them get away with being lazy. Insiders and people who knew them both always knew exactly who he was talking about. Number 8. Henry Fonda. the gentleman, who rubbed Widmark completely the wrong way. Henry Fonda had a reputation all over Hollywood as one of the real class acts, someone who was calm, polite, and quietly commanding with a strong presence. But behind that gentlemanly, respectable image, Richard Widmark saw something completely different. He once told a journalist off the record, meaning it wasn't supposed to be published, "He's so cold inside that he could freeze a burning furnace." That single line and comment revealed years and years of quiet resentment and hidden anger between these two men. Their uneasy relationship and uncomfortable dynamic began in 1962 on the huge, sprawling Western epic movie called How the West Was Won. The cast was absolutely massive and filled with big names: John Wayne, James Stewart, Gregory Peck, and many more. But it was Henry Fonda who really got under Widmark's skin and irritated him the most. Fonda had this habit of rehearsing privately by himself, skipping all the group read-throughs where everyone practiced together, and just relying on his instinct during the actual takes when the camera was rolling. Widmark absolutely hated that approach. "You can't call it instinct when you're just winging it and making things up," he reportedly muttered between scenes while shaking his head. Later on, Widmark confronted Fonda directly, face to face. "Stick to the page and the script, Henry," he said firmly. Fonda replied very calmly and smoothly, "The page doesn't breathe or come alive on its own." Widmark just walked away, shaking his head in frustration and disbelief. Their silent rivalry lasted for decades, many, many years. Whenever Fonda's name came up in interviews or conversations, Widmark's tone of voice would tighten and get harder. Meanwhile, Fonda just brushed it all off with his trademark composure and calmness, saying once, "Dick took the work harder and more seriously than anyone I've ever met in my entire life." That might have been absolutely true, and it was exactly the reason why Widmark could never stand him or get along with him. 8 names, 8 different stories, and a lifetime full of grudges and hatred that never faded away or disappeared. Which one of these Hollywood legends and famous actors do you think deserved Widmark's hatred the most? Or do you think maybe Widmark was the one who took things too far and was too sensitive? Tell us what you think down in the comments section below. And don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and stay tuned for more hidden stories and secrets from old Hollywood's golden age.